run video on replacing the front fork on my new Pedego Element. It is a fantastic e-bike in and of itself, but there are some budget elements to it that I think could be improved. Recently, Pedego has released a new suspension front fork, and that's what we're going to be doing today to replace the rigid fork on this thing. So I literally just got home from Pedego in Solana Beach, and where I purchased this front fork. Went over it with the technicians there, and you know, I'd say for those of you that are mechanically inclined, this is probably a pretty easy job, particularly for a couple of reasons with Pedego. For one, this is a Pedego branded aftermarket part for the Element, so everything that you need should be included here. And some really important features here, as you can see, the crown race has been pressed into place for you already. The star nut has also been installed for you. So I don't know anything about who makes this fork. I was really, you know, the appeal is that it's a Pedego part, and so it would bolt directly on. But I can see there's a preload adjustment here, and then on this side, maybe this is the rebound adjustment, but it also looks like you can lock your fork out for like hill climbs or something. Oh yeah, so if you tighten it this way, it stops, and it's got nice clicks to it. So this is probably the rebound. I'm not sure exactly, and if anybody knows, you can feel free to leave some stuff in the comments. But you know, I think the proof is going to be when we go to ride this thing, how it behaves. All right, so the trickiest part of this job for me is that I don't have a proper bicycle maintenance stand. So what I'm going to try to do is I have a what is this, a cinch strap. I have a strap supporting the frame here, doubled back on itself, and then I've got it supported by a hook up in the ceiling. And that's going to keep the front of the bike from dropping down. And then I'm using my bumper hitch rack to use this lateral support to keep the bike from rocking side to side. I'm going to be gentle with it, but it's, you know, it's generally holding it in a pretty good position. I might need to just lift this front tire off. So what I'm going to try to do now is remove the front wheel, make sure the bike is totally stable before I start working on it, and then start taking everything apart. Okay, the next step here is going to be to take off the caliper. Also like to take this opportunity to say that of the components that do feel budget on this bike, the brakes that came with it, the Tektros don't seem too bad, but the pads that came are just horrible. They squealed and had made grinding noises from the first day I rode the bike. So I've got some organic pads ordered for this thing, and you know, maybe someday I'll convert to hydraulic. But they're getting the job done, and for the price, kind of hard to beat it. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to upgrade. Is what I'm going to do. I'm going to screw these back into the caliper for use on the other fork. There's a little washer on them too. Don't miss that. There's a washer and some blue Loctite, and then this cable stay looks like I might just need some pliers to pull it out. Let's get a little screwdriver in there. Yep, and just pop it free. I'm gonna put that somewhere safe on the bench. Okay, next step is going to be to undo the top bolt. Okay, so there's this small little cover is all you need to take off from the very crown here. And just like down below, it is a 5mm Allen that fits on both the top tube and the handlebars. So I think what I'll probably do first here is take the handlebars off, and then we'll do the top tube. So 5mm, undo these clamps. Just a couple turns off of here. What I see happening here is this is a cap that comes off with the top bolt. So that's going to be the first step. So I'm actually going to tighten the handlebars up a little bit more so that the fork doesn't come dropping out of there really quick without me being ready. And that was pretty loose. So keeping, you know, that was, gosh, 10, 15 inch-pounds. So when I preload this thing, I'm not going to put a ton of torque on it. Just snug it down till I get a little friction in the steering head. Okay, so right now the handlebars are the only thing holding this whole assembly together, or keeping the fork from dropping out. Now, while I hold the bottom of the tube, I'm going to take the handlebars and loosen them back up. Like that. Okay. Now, something to note, I don't think we're gonna have to make an adjustment because it's pre-cut, but if you look down in there, you can see there's about 1/4 of an inch between the top of the steering tube and the handlebars. That's gonna be important so that the top cap can actually put preload on the bearings. So we shouldn't have to make that adjustment, but we're gonna check that. We're gonna check that when we put this all back together. So handlebars are gonna come off. And I'm gonna just set them down on the floor carefully. And at this point, spacer's gonna come off. Set that on the bench. And now we have a dust cap. And there's a rubber sealer on the bottom of the dust cap. I wanna make sure that stays intact. I'll show you when it comes off. Keep twisting. And we're free. Okay, you can see there's a little rubber seal that goes around a lip here. I'll inspect that carefully before we put this back together. Okay, also there's a split ring, like a preload, like maybe a bearing guide of some sort. That comes out. And I believe that's everything. So let's drop the fork out. And that is a long steering tube. And it's out. So there, halfway done. Okay, so as we put this thing back together, I'm sure there are 1,000,001 lubricants you could probably use for this. I'm sure there's some specialty expensive bike lube you can use, but what I'm gonna use is this white lithium grease. I figure if it's good enough to keep a fifth wheel kingpin from grinding, it's probably good enough for some wheel bearings or from steering head bearings. In you go. Handlebars. Let's review where we're at. So I've got the steering handlebars. I've got the handlebars back on the steering head, and you can see I've got that 1/4 inch gap again, which is just what I wanted, where I wanted to be, which is awesome. So this Pedego element specific fork is great. I'm loving it already. I'm gonna set this here. I'm gonna put the top cap back on. The star nut's already installed in there, so I just basically bring this down. Once I've got this sort of snugged, I'm gonna loosen the handlebars and kind of get them straightened out here. Okay, got a little there. I'm gonna loosen the handlebars now that the top cap is on. I'm gonna straighten them last, but for right now, I wanna try to get the preload kind of dialed in. So I said it was pretty light. It was like 15 inch-pounds. So run it down till, basically I'm just using my thumb pressure, whatever I can get with my thumb. And, oh, it feels, there's no play in it. What is that clicking? That's the light. It feels pretty loose. I'm gonna give it a little more. I'll make sure I really got that seated in there. Yeah, it's not fighting me very much. So I don't think it's like a traditional bearing. Okay, so here's the first surprise. The old forks had, I don't know what you call this, a radial mount caliper adapter. The new forks have post mounts. So I'm gonna take this adapter off, and then I'll screw the caliper directly on there. And hopefully we don't have any fit issues, but based on how everything's gone so far, I think we're gonna be in good shape. So what I've done is I've tightened them down so that the caliper is just loose in here. And when we mount the tire, we're gonna go ahead and depress the brakes to get this caliper centered, and then I'm gonna tighten it down so that I don't have one rotor, or excuse me, I don't have like the inside pad dragging while the outside one has a whole bunch of travel in it.
The wheel.
Hey, so I'm sorry to do this to you guys. I like to show every step of the process, but as I started putting the wheel back on, I realized, oh shoot, the fender. Everything was going great. I didn't want to show it until I realized that the bracket is a heck of a lot shorter than the fork itself. So you can see like this would have been where the original fork body was that this bolt went through. And these tabs are definitely designed for that width. So I had 2 Teflon spacers left from another project. You can get these at Home Depot in various sizes. So I just put 2 of those in there back to back and tightened the thing up. So I apologize for not showing more detail about that. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna stand behind the bike and maybe I'll get it lined up so you can see this part. What I'm doing is I'm looking down, I can't quite do this from where I'm at, but I'm looking down the steering tube at the front wheel and I'm adjusting the alignment of the handlebars, and that looks pretty good. So once it looks good, go ahead and tighten down your steering bolts. Okay, dust cap back on the top bolt. Good. And there's one more thing. I need to route the brake line. So let's run this right there. Cool. So there you have it. The suspension fork installed with the fender. Brakes are working really well. I'm going to go take it for a test ride. Get that light straightened out. Oh, that's annoying. I would say plan 30 to 45 minutes to do this job if you've never done it before. I did this job in about 35 minutes while I was recording. So super easy. No part of it was very challenging at all. The last step I did was I added about 1 inch to my kickstand height so that the bike doesn't lean over excessively. But man, super easy mod. I'll let you know how it goes when I get this thing out on the trail later this afternoon. But $200 for the fork, 30 minutes of effort, little bonding time with your bike, well worth the investment. Thanks. Okay, impression time. I've put about 80 miles on this fork since I installed it. And I'd have to say, it is not a pro level fork by any stretch of the imagination, but this isn't a pro level bike either. What it does give you is 3.5 inches of travel that gives you just a lot more comfort in your hands when you're riding over rough terrain. It makes the riding feel a little more relaxed. You carry a little bit more speed. In general, just adds to the comfort level of the bike. Now, when I was doing the installation, I mentioned a couple things, that you've got a preload adjustment. You've also got a compression lockout. And what's interesting is, I'm not that familiar with these forks, but this compression lockout has multiple clicks, as you can hear. And you can go from fully locked out, which is good for hill climbs and maybe like street riding when you need to put some pedal energy down, to full open. And it actually makes for a pretty spongy fork. So much so that, at my weight and height, I am bottoming this fork out when I have the preload at minimum and I've got the compression lockout. But what I do find is if I am bottoming out a lot, I can quickly put 2 or 3 clicks in here and provide just enough resistance that I don't bottom the fork out. It brings a little firmness back to it. So for the most part, I ride in full open. I have the preload backed off completely, so I just have a pretty spongy ride, and I kind of use this to tailor the ride. In my 80 miles, I've done everything from street riding to basic trail riding, even a little bit of rocky single track. And in all conditions, this fork is a drastic improvement over the fully rigid frame. So for 200 bucks and 30 minutes to install the thing, I feel like this really adds some capability to an already really fun bike, and makes the thing feel that much more fun. So I recommend the install. I hope you enjoyed watching. Feel free to leave comments below, and thanks for watching.